everyone. My name is Whitney Porter, and I am the scheduling coordinator for NJ4S. Thank y'all for joining us for our January webinar series today. We will be having a presentation on building healthy habits by Breanna Canetti. Breanna Canetti is a licensed clinical social worker and a licensed clinical alcohol and drug counselor with additional certifications in trauma healing, process addictions, sand play therapy, brain spotting, and yoga. She has experience working in various levels of care with children, adolescents, and adults, and currently supports individuals and families through her private practice. Her other passions include travel, animal welfare, and enjoying time in nature. Without further ado, we will have Building Healthy Habits, presented by Breanna Canetti.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. We're pretty small, so if there's anything that you guys do want to unmute or jump in with, please feel free as we go through this. There will be time at the end for question and answers as well, but I think that we'll have enough time really throughout if something comes up. Okay. So the objective of this presentation for building healthy habits is empowering you guys here and whoever's watching with knowledge, resources, and practical strategies. So I think that healthy habits is a topic that's talked about a lot, especially with January and New Year and resolutions. But I don't know if everyone's always feeling empowered to really act on that or clear on what that looks like. So that is my hope, and a lot of what I do in my personal practice is how do we empower people to make those choices or get really clear on what's a healthy habit to them versus maybe what we are saying is a healthy habit. So with those strategies to support positive lifestyle changes for overall wellness. And there's going to be some things that we talk about that, yes, clearly with the research behind it is healthier for overall wellness, but there might be certain things for each specific person that doesn't necessarily resonate for you that would still be important to talk about with the individuals we serve. So if you want to unmute, you can. If you're more comfortable popping in the chat, that's fine. What do you think of when you hear people talk about healthy habits? Whether that's an actual habit or just kind of some stereotypes around that.
Healthy eating.
Mm-hmm.
Going to the gym.
The gym.
Healthy diet.
Mm-hmm.
Consistency was the first word that popped into my head.
Yes, absolutely. Taking this, yeah, but we might be told that, right? We'll opt for the stairs or parking farther away in the parking lot. For sure. Thank you. So yeah, this little graphic is kind of, I guess, the pillars of it or what we hear about a lot. And for me in this presentation of bringing it back to basics, so sleep, how we're hydrating our body, are we taking care of also our medical health? But some of these other things that we hear about, such as the gym, and some people that's really important to them, and then you'll see we'll get to barriers too. Some people that's not always accessible. So I think it's really important that we're also thinking outside the box and kind of breaking things down for stability and the foundation, and then we can build on top of that depending on each person's unique needs and what they have access to. So I have a lot of people that I work with think oh, I need to go get my nails done or my hair done or a spa day, or I need to join LA Fitness for this to be a healthy habit. And that's not necessarily the case. And then I work with a lot of individuals, and maybe you guys can relate with this as well, where we're on this side of the screen and we're being pulled in multiple directions. You know, a lot of the influences that we have between work and everything else that we kind of need to navigate outside of work can make us feel like this person, which reminds me of like an octopus, but being pulled in all those different things. So when I think of healthy habits, or my hope with this presentation is, even if we are that busy, how can we find even micro moments to take care of our well-being, or at least move closer towards that goal in ways that are more accessible and maybe more realistic for us as we build towards something. And I'm not against the spa or getting your nails done or hair done if that's something that you're into. I just want to make sure that that's not all that's being talked about when we talk about healthy habits. Okay. So I think also addressing barriers and just kind of how we are wired as humans is really important to getting back to that foundational piece of how to build healthy habits, but also recognizing that when these barriers are present, this might be our main focus, and that is still a healthy habit and working towards wellness before we can implement some of the other things like gym or meal planning and stuff like that. So for some individuals that I work with, if they don't have adequate support, they don't have any social connection or childcare, you know, them being able to get to a gym is not going to happen. So it might be something where there's a gym down by me, I'm in Monmouth County, that offers childcare if you do go to the gym, where they have someone that will kind of help babysit while you go for a workout. So that might be one option in regards to thinking outside of the box of meeting people where they are with some of their barriers. But then I am also working with individuals who maybe a gym membership is not within their budget right now, or they don't have transportation to a gym. So taking a look at this list, is there anything that you would add, or anything that you're also seeing a lot of with the individuals you serve that are maybe barriers to them being able to show up for the healthy habits that they want to? Lack of education, yeah. Educational disparities for sure. And that's something that we'll touch a little bit on in the medical piece as well, because if we don't know what we don't know, you know, we all have blind spots. So that's a really good one. And that's where I think we can come in as well. And again, we have to practice within our scope, but we can still give some education of maybe the importance of connecting with someone like a primary care physician. I know when I used to work at the Recovery High School with Prevention Links. And so for some of the parents, they couldn't get there during school hours. You know, depending on where they were working and what they needed to do, that wasn't going to happen. And depending on the program, you know, we were able to be a little more flexible I could stay later to allow parents to come in after work shifts, but that's not always accessible to people either. So that's where I think also being really connected with who we can network with and who we can refer with is important for the people that we serve, because there's programs, I know, like our recovery centers are open on the weekends. You know, there are options to connect with people's needs, maybe isn't us, but being up to date on that and utilizing our own networks and resources, I think is really helpful in that. So with Prevention Links, a lot of the barriers here, I know that some of our programs do support with, but even that, continuing to connect with the people internally as well as outside of Prevention Links can be really helpful. Oh shoot. Okay, so our first one with the medical, I kind of always think back to Maslow's, if you remember that way back when in kind of Psych 101, where they're like, you know, there has to be this foundation first, and before we can even get up the pyramid, we have to be making sure that our foundation is stable. And I think that metaphor works really well in the recovery world as well, right? Like, we need to make sure that the pieces that we're going to build on top of are solid before we start adding all of these things on top of it and maybe overwhelming people's systems. So I think, Safa, to your point with the education, I have a lot of individuals that I work with, and they're like, I can't tell you the last time I got blood work. I can't tell you the last time I went to a doctor. And sometimes just starting there, because some of the symptoms that they're having, whether it's insomnia or, challenges with their mood or hormonal imbalances, some of that stuff with blood work we might be able to see. So when we can rule out that, instead of trying to say, well, if you would just go to the gym and maybe walk to the park, walk to Trader Joe's instead of parking right next to it, then you'll be fine. It's like we're missing a huge piece of the puzzle. That something might be underlying, like a medical condition or hormonal imbalance. And some people, I work with a lot of individuals with autoimmune diseases because I work with a lot of trauma. So if we're not managing the chronic conditions, we're going to see symptoms coming out that just engaging in healthy habits isn't necessarily going to be the cure for. Does that make sense, or any questions or comments on that? Okay. So some of the resources that I put in here, and then Whitney, does this presentation get sent out to everyone? If not, I can always send it in an email. Sometimes cultural barriers can cause a lack of education, so people rely on traditional practices instead of seeking medical attention. Yeah, and we have to meet people there too. We had someone who was Jehovah and their child was struggling with a cancer diagnosis, but in their religion it was not okay to do a blood transfusion, right? So it was this battle of what was happening with the nurses and what they wanted for this child and what the family was okay with. So another really good point, and it's something that we have to be gentle in navigating, because it's not an intention of not helping their daughter, right? This is something that was their belief. So that's something too. And there's been times that I have the privilege in private practice now being able to work with people for a long time. Did you have a question or comment, Armando?
Yes, I wanted to ask a question about that. So you're saying that the nurses, they didn't understand the religious aspect of why they couldn't get the transfusion, like there was a miscommunication there?
I feel like it was more of a frustration. It was more of, that's not our belief, and your daughter needs a transfusion. There wasn't maybe this understanding and meeting the parents with why, their belief. But so yeah, it could have been a misunderstanding and maybe not fully educated about their belief system, but it felt like a lot of frustration, and the family didn't really feel understood or met with why they were saying no to the transfusion.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So I lost my train of thought for a minute. But I think I was answering your chat, which now has disappeared. Okay, I can't get the chat back up. Can someone just write in it and I can see if it'll pop back up? Perfect, thank you. Okay. So yeah, so the cultural barriers, lack of education, and again, this is sometimes I have to be, that's what I was saying, I have the privilege of working with people. It has taken me years sometimes, depending on people's trauma with medical professionals or being committed against their will, to be okay with even seeking medical treatment. So that's something that I have seen come up as well. And then some people really don't have access, so they didn't know how to find somebody. So these are some resources underneath that will either help you find a provider or sliding scale, things like that, community clinics. And then there's also like medical schools, teaching hospitals that will do things for cheap or free because their students are practicing. So these are things that, like I said, sometimes just thinking outside of the box can help depending on what the barrier is. If somebody has insurance, for sure, we can walk them through kind of using their card and how to find a provider, whether it's through the number on the back or through the website. But for some of those individuals that we're working with that maybe that's not the option, these are just some other resources that we can use. And so whether this presentation is sent to you guys automatically or not, I can make sure that you get all of those links too. And then Safa, what you were saying before about the information. When you are working with the doctor and you have more information on your blood work, on your symptoms, then you are more empowered to make the choice of, okay, what do I need? Whether we need to make some changes in our lives, whether we need some medication management for something that's happening. This is where I find this to be one of the most important ones, because we want to rule out medical before anything else. Okay. Sleep hygiene is probably most of my clients' biggest complaints. They're awake more often than not. And there was an interesting study where they were talking about sleep deprivation, and it was like 6 hours is what they were considering sleep deprivation. Most of my clients, I would say that's about average. 5 to 6 hours is how much they're sleeping. So to see that most of us aren't getting enough sleep and how important sleep is for our wellness is also a huge discrepancy. So sleep hygiene is really, when we're sleeping, is when our brain and our body is able to have that cellular repair. And if we're not getting that or getting quality sleep, our brain is not functioning optimally. So we're also therefore going to see a correlation with our emotion regulation, hormones, obviously cognitive function, right? If we've ever had a bad night's sleep, maybe our brain doesn't feel like it's working to the best of its ability. I thought this was interesting too, that it also supports our immune system. So this would be a conversation or presentation for another day, but something that I find really powerful in the work that I do, but also just in understanding humans, is understanding our nervous system in a more holistic approach of how everything's interconnected. So you'll see throughout this presentation, a lot of the healthy habits come with very similar benefits. You know, it's not just addressing the physical. Like even with the medical piece, if there's something going on hormonal or a chronic condition that's being missed, and then it's finally getting treatment, then we might start to see some of the other parts of our lives or treatment areas fall into place, right? So if we're treating the medical condition and therefore we are able to sleep better, or we're able to manage some of our symptoms better, it's like, okay, now we can continue to habit stack on top of that. These two websites, the Sleep Foundation and the CDC, that'll be like more education for people. But some of my favorite go-tos for individuals that are super free and accessible because they're just right on your phone or computer. Insight Timer is my favorite meditation app. I have some people that like Calm, but I find Insight Timer to have the most free and wide variety of all different guided meditations, visualizations, music, yoga nidra, which I don't know if anyone's familiar with that, but they call it like a nervous system massage. So it's something that really taps you into the body and relaxes each part of the body. And that can help people get into a state of relaxation. And this non-sleep deep rest, that's right on YouTube. So that's also a free resource, but even for people that are struggling with insomnia, so maybe they're not necessarily sleeping, the research behind NSDR is that even engaging in that can help bring a sense of relaxation and rest to the body, even if we're not actually falling asleep. So these are things that I will often recommend. And if anyone else has other ones, I always encourage you guys to share that with each other, because I learned so much from the people that I work with and the people that I network with, because we don't know it all. You know, there's so much out there that some clients or participants are going to respond well to that maybe I've just never heard of. And so the more education that we have, the more education we can share with them and resources. It's kind of like this trickle effect. So as they start doing it, and sometimes in session I'll go through it with them so that they know how to find it. But this For You to Sleep podcasts are really awesome too. And if anyone has Spotify, like if any of the people you're working with or you, Spotify has a lot of these resources too in regards to meditation, even now books. They have audiobooks on Spotify now. And I do have some people that love the ASMR things. So I don't know if you're seeing that too. Okay. So nutrition and hydration. A lot of people talked about nutrition and meal planning when we first started. And sometimes, again, depending on our access and our barriers, like the things that we're told don't always apply. So I like to, again, start small with, can we add something? So maybe instead of trying to change up your whole diet or coming into January of like, I'm never eating McDonald's again, like, okay, can we reel it into, as we start working towards those changes, is there something that's lacking that maybe we want to add in, right? So like if we wanted to give them some education, blueberries, beautiful antioxidant and brain food, cool. Do you want to start adding in blueberries to what you're already doing? Right, so it's something that, again, we're meeting people where they are. It's not so overwhelming to the system of all of these big changes. Because again, tapping back into that understanding of just how we're wired, change, transition, new things, it's a little dysregulating for us because we are wired for comfort zones and what we know. So when things kind of go against that, it can cause some activation or shutdown. So in regards to the education piece, it's not so much about our value of what's the good food or a bad food. There's certain things that are going to give you more energy and vital nutrients. And this is, again, something that when we do link them with primary care physicians, or if they need a nutritionist, that's a conversation that they can have, and they can really maybe dig into what is missing if they do have deficiencies in their blood work. And hydration, I'm actually colorblind, so I don't know exactly what color, but if you can see the skin health and digestive health is, yeah, awesome, Shayla. That's for the water, like some of the benefits of making sure that we are hydrated. So our skin health, toxin elimination, kidney function, but it really will, like, and especially because I work primarily with individuals struggling with addiction, a lot of times if they're actively using or they're struggling with that, all of these other things kind of go to the back burner. So this might not be the primary focus of making sure that we're hydrated and eating well. So some of these things, it really is relearning as we're entering recovery or as we start working with people. I'm not sure where everyone is in regards to what populations they're working with, but as people start coming to you for support, this might be new for them. This might be something that maybe they haven't talked about or they haven't practiced yet. So these resources, I personally, and my specialty is not eating disorders, but I personally try to stay away from trying to talk about restriction, what we want to cut out. That's why I like the adding, because we don't know people's body image challenges. We don't know their eating disorder history. So I like to be mindful with that we're not shaming food or judging food as good or bad, but we're really just taking a look at, is how your current nutrition and hydration style, is it serving you? Are you feeling okay with what it is? Like, I like to give them the space to let me know what they want to work on and what's working and what's not, and make sure that we're within our scope. So if it's something where I am working with someone who is struggling with restricting or excessive exercise, that they're being referred to someone who can really support them there. Okay, movement. I just have a thing for sloths, so I thought this was really cute, but I think it's important to recognize that movement can be anything. So again, when we're bringing it back to basics, or we're really giving people options to empower them to make the choice of what they want to do, they can walk their dog. Whatever it is that's bringing some movement into your body, or someone before said take the stairs, right? Like maybe that is the way. Maybe it's like, I don't have the time or the access to go to the gym, but I can move my body by taking the stairs and getting some steps in. And again, as I was saying before, that all of this you're going to see tie in, this isn't just for our physical well-being. There's a lot of research coming out about walking, just walking, with anxiety. There was even something coming out with like our lymph node drainage. But I find that stuff really cool, that all of this is interconnected. So you can kind of take the one focus and be hitting a couple other healthy habits, right? So like this movement can be taking care of maybe our stress relief and taking care of, I think, yeah, with the walking specifically, even with the anxiety, but they even have trainings coming out now with trauma-informed weightlifting. Like they have all of these things that can be helpful for people. So I have some people that love things like yoga, and I have some people that really have a hard time sitting in that sort of stillness. So they do better with something like running or moving their body differently. So again, being able to really check in with them with what works. And I think really reminding people that it's trial and error, right? So if this is something that they're working on and implementing and they're like, this still isn't really cutting it for me, maybe we can try something else. You know, it doesn't have to be so boxed in. I know we talked about the gym, which is absolutely an option, but there's also a lot of free resources for people to follow along with or learn from. And it's something that doctors are talking a lot about now too, even in your physicals, like, are we stretching? Are we moving our body? But even in a lot of public parks, they'll have workout stations. I know it's kind of cold now, but that's something that's an option for people as well. If they wanted more like tools, like if people like doing things like pull-ups, they have that for free outside. And school and work, and honestly, I don't know if Prevention Links does this, but there's some jobs that I have had individuals work with where they get some sort of discount for doing things that are healthy. So we'll have to ask PL what they do, but school as well. Like schools typically have free gyms and discounts on different things as well. I didn't put it on here, but just remember Groupon. That was one that I had a lot of people utilizing. Okay, nature and outdoors, and this can really be even just standing outside. You know, this doesn't have to be anything if you're not into hiking and stuff like that, but there is a lot of research in regards to our overall well-being with getting direct sunlight. So yes, for our actual vitamin D levels, but it's also in regards to that grounding effect and connecting with nature for our nervous system that's gonna contribute to what we're talking about, that overall wellness. You know, it's not just the vitamin D production, we also see improvements in mental and emotional health with connecting to nature. So I love that the Recovery Center does offer a lot of hikes. I think they did like canoeing. They've done some outdoor things that I'm a little biased because, as you've heard in my bio, I love nature and hiking. But if that's not someone's thing, I think there's other ways that we can still talk about the benefit of just sunlight, and also ties into our sleep. So with the sunlight in the morning, it helps our circadian rhythm, helps our sleep hygiene, right? So this is how some of the things can come together. Shayla, that's amazing. Okay, so apparently our insurance offers reimbursement for exercise. So people might be familiar with some of these resources already. Meetup is, because sometimes the people I work with, you know, might not have others in their social circle who want to do some of these things, or if they're coming out of a certain lifestyle and they're entering recovery, or they've moved here from somewhere else, they don't know who to connect with. And there is power in connection. You know, we are also wired for being part of community. So Meetup, the recovery centers, All Trails. There's a bunch of these websites. This was just a fun New Jersey to give you an idea that we can also be Googling what's happening in our areas. Most of these events are free. You know, they might be like family fun days or things where people are getting together. I live down by the beach, so there's a bunch of like beach cleanups or boardwalk walks. But this can really be even within our own neighborhood or local parks. And even if it's not as nice out, they are seeing in the research that it's still beneficial to be outside. Even if it seems cloudy, there's still a benefit to that sunlight, even though it's not looking sunny. Okay, stress management, I feel like is the one that's talked about most in regards to healthy habits, or, you know, a lot of people come to me because of that picture that we saw in the beginning where it was like the octopus arms, that a lot of us are just pulled in a lot of directions or experiencing a lot of stress. So I focused more on this one for the resources because most of my clients or participants, individuals we serve, can let us know what's stressing them. You know, whether it's finances or family dynamics, but I find that a lot of people struggle with, what do I do with it now? Or they feel like there's no way out of it. You know, there's no way to stop some of these things because the truth is some of it's not within our control. right? We can't change the family dynamics. We can't change maybe what's happening within the household. So what we can control is how we kind of respond to things and how we take care of, how we take care of our inner alignment. So breath is one of the most powerful tools, and it's one that's with us all the time. So I do always love teaching breath work, but if you don't want to do that, that's what the apps are for, right? Like, you don't have to know these breathwork techniques. You can still link your individuals to some of the resources we talked about with Insight Timer, YouTube, things like that. And there's also, it's more so by me, but sometimes they do come up north, but they have also like free yoga, meditation, sound bowl healing with the Phoenix for those in recovery. And then sometimes people, like we were talking about with the schools and hospitals, people that are training for yoga, typically as soon as they finish their classes, they offer community classes, which is like free or donation based, right? So if this is something that people you're working with are interested in, it's like, this is the type of stuff that we can be looking into, just so that we can meet their needs and find ways that makes it more accessible. Support, as we were saying before, we are wired for connection. So whatever that looks like, that can be friends, family, some of the other groups that we connect with, but not being in isolation. So that's one of the things that I also focus on a lot with the clients that I work with. If they're coming in and they don't have any adequate support, even if it's just somebody to talk to outside of myself, that's one of the focuses of our sessions, because being in that isolation is not how we're wired to thrive. Setting boundaries. This is what a lot of people come to me for, and it is challenging because some people don't like when we put a boundary in place, right? So as they challenge themselves to step into that, they might get met with some resistance from whoever they're placing a boundary with. And again, we can start with whatever is accessible. So I can't remember the name right now of this book, but they basically go through boundaries as like a green light, a yellow light, and a red light. So maybe we start with the green light, something that feels safe for the person to say, something that might seem small, but at least it's something they can feel accomplished with. And then we can move down to some of the ones that are a little harder for them. And so that mentality with starting where people can actually feel accomplished and empowered is my takeaway for everything that we do. Because if we put too much on them, right, if we're already mostly stressed, if we put too much on their overwhelmed system, it's probably going to be more discouraging and it's not going to be successful for them. So being able to, like I said, start that foundation, then we can habit stack on top of it. Does that make sense? Okay. Grounding is really just utilizing our senses. So that one on the bottom. And so this is something that I will do in session or with people. And if you're open to it, we can try a little bit even in here of just noticing even our body posture. So this is called, I think it's called sensory motor. But if your shoulders are hunched or you're kind of over, just seeing if when you roll your shoulders back and you kind of have this alignment or this stacking of your head over your chest, over your ribs, if you notice anything different in your breath patterns, in your physical being, in your connection to self, yeah, easier to breathe. So some of these patterns that we hold, we might not even recognize, right? And so when we are stressed, there can be a change in the body structure and a change in the breath patterns, right? So people who are struggling with anxiety, they're actually most likely having shorter, more shallow breathing. So you are not wrong. Absolutely. That a lot of people feel that too. They're like, wow, like I feel a little bit more confident or more empowered in this pose. And it is, sometimes feeling small or hunched is going to play a role, and then being able to really open ourselves up a bit and take up that space. And this is, more of the trauma work or more of the clinical work with people that I work with who are struggling with that. But did you have a hand? Oh, that are struggling with that. This little practice, even there with them, you're still, even if it's just a micro, even if it's just a micro moment of hi Nafisa, that is still something really powerful, right? We're building the resiliency, we're building the muscle memory. So I have some people that are like, Bree, I don't have the time. I don't even have the 20 minutes to walk around the block. And I'm like, okay, so where can we start? Do you take a shower? Yes, of course I take a shower. Okay. In the shower, can we, while you're already taking the time that you're in there, can we just practice feeling the water on your skin? Right? Can we practice what the sensation is like, whether the water is warm or hot, what you're noticing? And they're like, okay, yeah. Do you drink coffee or tea? Most of the time, yes. Can we take a moment with your coffee or tea, really smelling it, noticing the aroma? Can you feel the sensation of the heat on your hands through the cup? It's not adding any time, right? We're just shifting the mindfulness of the practice. That makes sense? So this is where we can really break it down in meeting people when they feel like they don't have the time, and sometimes when they don't have the time, but it's with things that they already do. So we're just shifting that awareness. And as they're making more conscious awareness, they can be more on top of like, oh, I'm noticing that I'm hunched again. Or like, oh, let me try that thing that, Armando taught me and roll my shoulders back and see how I feel. And then if they, like a lot of the meditation apps, the Insight Timer, I'm like, you can put it on to go to bed. You can play one and then it'll stop. It's not like YouTube where it keeps playing. So you can put on a sleep meditation. You can turn your phone on Do Not Disturb, put it on, go to sleep. And for some people, it'll work and help them go to sleep. And some people, like I said, they won't necessarily fall asleep if they're struggling with insomnia, but it's still helping with the rest. Music is a huge one. Dance is actually a huge one as well. And things that can help put us in a more, like it says here, with the senses of what we can see. Looking at things of, whether it's pictures of people or animals that have made us happy, whether it's beautiful scenery. I have people that will do like mood boards, whether on Pinterest or they'll like screenshot things that they see on Instagram. So whatever it is that your participants are already utilizing, it's can we get creative with what they're doing and make something with that to start with. Okay. So we went over some of them. There's obviously more healthy habits, but anything, if you want to think about this and go through it, we can, or you can do it on your own. With any of the habits that we talked about, any that you want to establish a routine with or bring more into your own experience. And you can share it or not. So that will be us getting clear on maybe our own priorities, right? So what it is that we want to bring in or what we want to bring more focus to. From there, setting a realistic goal and starting small. So a lot of what we talked about was, maybe we're not going to all of a sudden wake up today and have a huge meal plan and change our entire diet and eating pattern for the week, but we might want to add something in. I like the thought of adding rather than subtracting when it comes to healthy diet and implementing physical wellness. Yeah, that I've found that to be more accessible for people. I think another thing that I work a lot with is shame. And so being really mindful that it's typically not intentional, right? None of us are coming into this field to ever intentionally harm anybody. We're coming in to help. And some of the things that we're told, right? Like, oh, you had to park right there, or you didn't do this, or you said you were going to go to yoga class and you didn't. Like, these things might feel shameful because the person already knows that they told us they were going to do that. And they probably had intentions of doing it and something came up, right? Something blocked them. So if we can really meet them in a sense that we get it, because even us in this field, right? Like, we have our own moments of maybe inconsistency or falling back on an old pattern. These things are going to happen just because we're human. So I think really normalizing that and not shaming it is something that builds the rapport and also builds the confidence of like, okay, the consistency isn't so much about doing it all the time. The consistency is how can we come back to what we're talking about. So like if we fall off, can we recognize that and come back? So meditate more to regulate feelings would be a good add-on. Yeah, so it's like if you want to work on meditation, instead of being shamed or the day that maybe you miss it, being like, here I go again, back into this cycle, I didn't do it or I didn't do it right. It's like, okay, I got 2 days together of meditating. Today, what happens today that I didn't get my meditation in? Right? Can we be more curious with ourselves and with our participants of what was blocking them so that we can, like I said here, improve that sustainability. So we're just working with it. We're just understanding what was maybe the block and doing something differently with that. Allocating time within your schedule. So the same way that you guys carved out this time to meet here, whether it was because you really wanted to or if you guys were like, all right, this meeting's on my calendar, the time was still carved out to be here. And this is something that I recommend for everyone, especially my clients that are like, I don't have time to eat lunch. Or I was so busy during the workday, I forgot to eat lunch. I'm like, okay, again, right, we're talking about the energy and the vital nutrients and then the symptoms that they feel when they're not energized or they haven't been eating. You know, some of my clients don't eat until dinner. So some of that stuff is impacting all of these other symptoms that we talked about. Can we plug into their calendar, your work calendar, when you're actually going to take lunch? And honestly, for some people, they're like, no, my job, that's not the type of job that I have. Right? So there's other things that even though I wouldn't say that that's the most ideal, we're still going to work with it. Is there something they can bring in with them that in between meetings they have with them on their desk or something like that? I really like bookending because I find that throughout the day is when we kind of feel like the octopus lady and that we're pulled in a lot of different directions depending on what we're doing. When we start the morning, right, with either that shower mindfulness or the coffee and tea mindfulness, stuff like that, where we end our day with like the meditation, that we can have more space for it. Trying to be gentle with myself as I get back into journaling. Celebrating progress instead of shaming myself for not keeping up with old habit schedules. I love that. Being gentle with yourself and celebrating yourself is the last bullet point here, because so many people I work with can get down on themselves that they haven't hit that goal. I didn't meditate every day this month. Whatever their thing is, right? Or like some of my clients still struggle sometimes with use or gambling. I bought a scratch-off ticket this weekend. And we're unpacking, like I said before, what didn't work or maybe what led to that. And we're recognizing that we're still making a lot of progress and we deserve compassion and grace. So this shame cycle doesn't serve us. We don't respond well to it. It shuts us down. But if we can be in a space where we recognize that the consistency is coming back to it, right? That your power, Whitney, is recognizing that journaling is something powerful for you and that you are making an effort to bring that back in. So meal plans, and again, this is mostly for, I don't care what's in the meal plan, I care that you're eating. So are you taking care of your body? Are you drinking water? And that's for a lot of the people that I work with that feel like they don't have time for that. So that's why even if it's something that's like snacks that you're bringing in, a lot of, in regards to the connection with our body and the interconnectedness, when we are kind of disconnected from those hunger cues, we're disconnected from what our body's asking for. So even that, I think, for my work, becomes really important. I'm not against technology. I know that it can be challenging, right? So I have people that really do feel addicted to their phones. But technology can be used to support us. And honestly, it's not going anywhere. You know, you and I are all able to do this today because of technology and being on Zoom together. So if we can, again, get clear on our priorities of how we want to utilize these resources, there's ways that it can be supportive for us, like the reminders or the Insight Timer app, versus the doom scrolling or kind of feeling really crappy after that dopamine spike and then crash, or depending on what we're looking at. You know, sometimes I really have to check in with people with the content of what they're watching, because that can be impacting their mood and their mindset as well. And the reflecting and adjusting. So checking back in with yourself. How are the goals going? Is this something that's working? I had an individual that kept saying, I'm going to a yoga class, I'm going to a yoga class. And then every time I saw him, he was like, I didn't go to the yoga class. So I was like, okay, well, like, let's just talk about it. Is that really the goal? Like, what are you trying to achieve with this yoga class? And it was really just a few more moments of Zen, right? So it was like, okay, well, if right now you don't have childcare and you have meetings all day, so we can't go to the yoga class, what else can we do to bring in the Zen, right? So we had to reflect and adjust where he was going to plug in just some time to sit on his mat or some time to connect with breath that wasn't leaving the house and getting to a yoga class, because that wasn't a realistic goal for him at that time. Okay. So I know we talked a bit about this, but the consistency is the key, and the consistency does not mean that we don't ever fall off of what we're saying we're going to do. The consistency is that we are doing the work to reflect, we're doing the work to check in, and we're doing the work to recognize this is what's working, this is what's not working. So these healthy habits, like, I think that's one of the healthiest habits. Can we check in with ourselves or with our accountability partners, whoever else we're working with, towards these practices? And so yes, as we continue to do that, we're overall improving like our physical, mental, and emotional health. But I think it's about reframing what consistency means. And that's it. If there's any last questions, comments.
Well, thank you so much, Breanna, for this presentation. We greatly appreciate you coming on to talk with us today about healthy habits. This was definitely very informative. And we thank you for taking the time to be here today. I'm going to be putting a link in the chat for our feedback form. If you have any feedback for Breanna on this presentation topic, or if this triggered any ideas for other types of presentations that you'd like to see from NJ4S, feel free to share. We have our next upcoming webinar series in February, Your Heart Matters. You can find the registration link for that on nj4s.nj.gov. If you go to the public offering section to learn more about those presentations. And we'll also be doing those every Monday at 12 p.m. So thank you everybody for joining us today. As always, you can find more information about NJ4S at nj4s.nj.gov, and specifically if you want more information about the Union County Hub, you can go to preventionlinks.org/NJ4S. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to be here for this presentation, and I hope y'all have a great rest of your day.